Welcome to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast, the show for women who are seeking more fulfillment in life and simply not getting it from their current situation. We focus specifically on careers, but hey, we spend a lot of time in our careers, so making changes here will definitely create an impact in your overall happiness. I'm your host, Simone Morris, and my mission is to empower women to succeed. I believe that in order to powerfully own your career, you must decide and claim that you want to sit in the driver's seat. You must know that you deserve better and be willing to not only do the requisite work, but be willing to go out on a limb to ensure your success. Each episode focuses on profiling a leader who is clearly demonstrating ownership of their career. Join me and my guests as we explore career journeys and bring you actionable strategies to use to get into the driver's seat for your career. Because ultimately, your career is your responsibility. Let's get into the show.
Hey everybody, it's Simone. Before we jump into this week's podcast, I wanted to stop in and say hello to everyone. I want to hear how you're doing in your career. Are you winning? I sure hope so. It's my intent to inspire and motivate you for your journey with the interviews that I'm doing on this podcast. I know I learned so much from our guests. I hope you've been enjoying some changes, like the last episode where I launched the Where Are They Now series. Seriously, if there's a previous episode, guests that you listened to, and you want me to feature them as a guest on the Where Are They Now, go ahead and send me a note at smorris@simonemorris.com. Or you can leave a comment in the Power of Owning Your Career podcast discussion group on LinkedIn. I'm also planning on doing a male feature. So for 1 month, I'll feature males who are crushing it in their career. Really, really awesome. Excited about the ideas and trying out some different things with the podcast. So stay tuned and continue to take this journey with me. I'm also open to your ideas. So do let me know. Again, I mentioned my email address before, smorris@simonemorris.com. So feel free to send me a note with ideas that you have, things that you want to hear and learn in your career. I'm open to it. I appreciate this community so much. And I want to make a big shout out to listeners in the United States, Germany, France, Spain, Canada, Ireland, UK. You all are my top listeners, and I appreciate you. In fact, I appreciate everyone that's listening to this podcast right now. Thank you so much for taking this journey again with me. If you're loving these episodes, do me one favor, head over to iTunes or wherever you listen to the podcast and leave a rating, hopefully a 5-star, for the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. Now let's get right to this week's show. I sat down with entrepreneur and coach Monica Taylor for this interview. Her message is an inspiring one. She is the second producer to tell me that she decided to walk away from a thriving career. I mean, you will enjoy her story about how well she was doing, her products being featured on HSN Network, etc., and working for top companies. But she decided to walk away and do her own thing. I don't want to give away the story, so please stay tuned and listen in. But I just want to say it's scary to walk away from a career that's giving you access, giving you dollars and more to step into your dreams. But you know what? You can do it. You deserve to be happy and you deserve to be in the driver's seat, my friends. So kudos to Monica. Let's get right over to this week's show. I'm super jazzed to have on the show today Monica Taylor, who is a rock star and has an amazing story. I can't wait to dive into the conversation, everybody. Monica, welcome to the show.
Well, with that type of introduction, I'm happy to be here, Simone. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Please tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you're currently doing.
First of all, thank you for what you do, Simone, and thank you for really putting a spotlight on ownership and responsibility. I think as a coach, that's one of the most important things that we teach. But I wasn't always a coach, Simone. I started out years ago, and I started my journey in television as a producer in talk TV, and that prepared me for war. That is the trenches. And I moved up quickly. And after I moved up the ladder, I went and launched a network called Oxygen. And that was super empowering, Simone. It was run by some of the most powerful women in media, right? Oprah, Winfrey, Geraldine Laybourne, Karen Mandabach. And that was sort of a change for me and a catalyst. I was put on air when I was there, which brought a new dimension to my career. And after that, I left and I started my own company. And it's no doubt, I have a great story about Gail King being my first coach we can talk about later, my first life coach. It's no doubt working there helped me make that change. And what I did was I had ownership of my programming. Most people didn't have ownership of their programming. So being able to have ownership changed the trajectory of everything that I did. And I went into syndication, and then I went into marketing. And after a while, I got married and had kids. And I then decided to create something called the Homework Box, which I had an exclusive deal on HSN for. And that was my biggest flop. And I talk about that a lot with my clients, and I'm really honest about that. And after that, I kind of reconvened, and that's when I became a coach, Simone. And you probably have a similar story. We're called to it. It happens by accident, kind of. And I started a blog, and all these women would come to me and talk to me. I was going through a very, very bleak, nasty divorce, Simone. And I realized I shouldn't be giving out advice and talking to people without knowing what I'm doing. And so I went and I took 2 years to just study and become a coach and learn how to help people in business. And here I am.
That is an amazing story. I am immediately going to go right into that story and learn more. I had someone on the podcast from ESPN who was also a producer, and she left the space. And so I'm curious, what was it that made you decide to leave a thriving career as a producer? Things are going so well, but then you decided to step out on faith and to walk your own path. What was the impetus for that?
That is such a good question, Simone. And I tell you, I was flying high. I was really doing well. And my personal life, and that's one thing my coaching specializes in with women. It's never really about just the marketing plan or just losing the 10 pounds. It's about what's behind it and how do we get there to do it. And in my personal life, it was falling apart and it was a mess. And I was trying to figure things out. And at the same time, the temperature of TV was changing, Simone. It's when reality TV first came out, and there were shows like Flavor of Love that were top shows, and my spirit was... Do you remember that time? And it was when things first started changing, and it wasn't in my spirit to do it. And I didn't know it at the time. At the time, you just struggle, and you're kind of you're in flux, and you feel confused. And I didn't realize till later is that I could no longer do that. I couldn't do what was required of me to have a number one show. And that's what made me make the change. I had young kids, and whatever's in front of me, I'm a true entrepreneur, Simone. I think of ideas, at least I think I do, all day long. So having my 2 kids prompted me to then launch my line of products for Moms Made Easy. And I never really left television. I still syndicate my shows. So I still had my hand in there, but I could no longer deliver the type of programming they were asking me to deliver, Simone. And I think a lot of women out there can relate to that.
Absolutely. But I want to ask you, because I'm also a mom, I have a 4-year-old, and what was it that made you decide to be in the driver's seat as opposed to jumping into another organization? You have all the skills, clearly. You have young children. You said that your personal life was not where you wanted it to be. So I'll put it in quotes, the comfort of another job where somebody is worrying about the hustle, selling the product. You instead decided to fully embrace it and go on your own path. And I call that the driver's seat. So what was it that gave you the confidence? Because I think this is important to listeners. They need to know what gave you the confidence to continue your path in the driver's seat.
I've always I have ADHD, and I'm very open about that because it changes the way you make decisions and how you look at things sometimes. And the one good part about that is we're kind of impulsive, and you learn to recover quicker when you're impulsive. And so sometimes I do make decisions that maybe aren't the smartest, but I know how to make them work. And you said something about being in the driver's seat, and you're right. It would have been so easy to go back and to make sure I got a check on Friday, right? Because everyone wants to be their own boss. They don't realize the value of knowing you're going to have a paycheck on Friday versus
indeed.
You don't know what you have to do to make sure you have a paycheck when you're a business owner on Friday. And you may not get one on Friday or the next Friday. And it was being true to myself. And it was a turning point for me after that point of not just being on autopilot, Simone. I spent a lot of my life on autopilot. I feel like I ran a race and I did really well in it, but it wasn't my race. And I think a lot of us wake up in your 30s around that time and go, what just happened? I should be the happiest I should be. And I didn't. Again, when you're in the moment, you just feel sad and confused and overwhelmed. But I just stayed true to myself and said, you know what, that's not going to work for me. I need to do this on my own. I need to be true to myself. I need to, until I can figure it out, not take the easy way out. And I did that. And let me tell you something, it is very scary. So for the women out there who are going through it, you need someone to talk to. You really do need someone to encourage you because it's scary, but you have to be authentic, right? Isn't that what 2020 is all about for women? Is like our authentic selves. And so I just started that journey back then.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So tell me, what is your formula for owning your career? With all this wisdom from being on the entrepreneur side, plus being on the corporate side, what would you say is Monica's formula for owning your career?
There's one thing I teach and one thing I learned, and I didn't always practice it, and that is if you're going to, even in your life, but especially with the business, before you take the first step, make sure that you are ready to take responsibility for every piece of your business. Every single thing that happens. And I know people don't even grasp what that means. And it doesn't mean going and micromanaging and not trusting people because you'll never grow your business. But it means making good choices and decisions, following them through, and understanding because you can't blame the marketing specialist, right? If you know ahead of time, you can't blame them. You approach it differently. Right? So I know that it has to work. So then I now am doing my day by day differently. And I think a lot of people believe all of these things coaches sell them by 4-day work week. You know, do it from home, be on the beach and run your business. And there is some of that, but owning your business is taking responsibility for it is a lot. And I think it's a lot easier to blame, right? And it's a lot easier to look somewhere else. But if you're the boss, like, who are you looking at? You gotta write paychecks on Friday, right? So you gotta make sure everything's done. And I don't know if people understand that is I can't look at you right now, Simone, and say I just failed, or I didn't do as the owner. You take responsibility before you even started.
How have you embraced having an appetite for risk? Because you need to take risk on this career journey. So what advice would you give to our listeners about having an appreciation for taking risk along your career journey?
Tell less people. I know that sounds weird, but if you're taking a risk, you got to believe in yourself. And if you share that with a lot of people, their fears and all of their emotions kind of, if you're looking for that support, risk is something that really you do have to do alone, I think, and make that commitment to take a risk and kind of no pain, no gain. I'm also okay, Simone, with losing and failure, right? So it's something that, I worked a lot with my ex-husband and he would say is, well, I don't know why people are scared. There's a rule. It's 10 times. Out of 10 times, you're going to find one that you're going to be successful. You don't know if it's the first one or the 10th one, or how long it's going to take, but you can't be afraid to fail. And I've had failures. I've had failures. I've had things I started, I couldn't finish. I didn't research well. I made a lot of mistakes. I recovered from them. And so I think people weren't afraid of failure. They have no problem taking risks, right? But Failure can be paralyzing. That's what coaches, I think, are great at helping people realize, is those fears that they don't realize, that it's not really about the risk, it's about the fear of failure.
Ah, yeah, absolutely. So tell us a story of how you bounced back from something that was a failure, and what strategies you used to bounce back from that.
What I talked about starting my own line of products for HSN with my kids, and I was super successful on TV, right? And I had the staff, and I had people who did my budgets, and I walked in and I got this deal, Simone, in a category that home shopping doesn't do, which is children and moms. If you notice, they don't sell products for children or necessarily geared to moms. But they believed in me, so they gave me this deal, and I was so excited. And it couldn't have come at a better time because my personal life was in flux, and I did not take a second to step back and kind of look and go, this is new. I didn't have a business plan. They ordered a line of products. I was developing the products, had to have them manufactured overseas. I was so overwhelmed, and I just thought I could hustle it the way I did every other time, Simone. You know, I'm a hustler. I had no idea I needed to have inventory and automation and all those things. And it was a huge failure. And I realize now I ended up hiring a consultant to try and take responsibility. And I realize now that I set myself up for failure from the beginning. And part of that I realized was, again, when your personal life is in flux, again, it affects business and vice versa for women. Not always for men, but for us women, it does. And that's the biggest help we can give people is stabilize. If you can get stable, then you can kind of balance the two. But I took no responsibility for it. I just kept saying, I can do this. I can do it. I know everyone does it that way, but I can do it this way. I didn't know enough about business at that point to ever make it work. I realize that now. I didn't have what it takes.
All right. Well, what advice would you give to someone wanting to own their career?
To own their career is just that, is to talk about it. If you're not talking about what you're doing, if you cannot say out loud, Simone, by next December, I plan to do this, this, and that, then I think you're not owning it, right? Because when you write something down, it's 40% more likely to happen. If you say something, if you put it on a vision board, but by me putting it out there to you, even if it's just in passing, you know, we do the podcast today and then we don't speak. I've still set out there a vibe of accountability for myself. So start speaking your truth. Start speaking who you want to be. Start being that person before you are. I think that's a big deal. A coach and I had an argument once, and she said, people need to be taught to be authentic. Of course they do, but until you can get there, you got to fake it till you make it sometimes. You know, and I teach clients that too, is Beyonce has to be Sasha Fierce to perform. Sometimes you have to fake it, right? Until you get it moving, because coaches help people move forward, and then you can be authentic. You start to become, because really, we all want to be authentic. So I think it helps you get there a little bit more.
Absolutely. So what resources, online or otherwise, have helped you in taking ownership of your career?
Oh my goodness. Today, the fact that we can just click on a computer and go to a webisode and learn almost anything, never mind YouTube. Although we're always being sold, or there may be ulterior motives, there's so much good information out there. LinkedIn is a great resource as well that I think you can trust to get your information from. Out of this, I actually, the last part of my business for this year, since I will put it out there, Simone, is we're going to develop an app that changes the way women do business. I find that there's 3 commonalities between women when they start businesses. I think there's a huge segment of kick-ass stars out there that just feel overwhelmed and don't know how. And so we want to create a community like that where you can go to start your bit, launch it, to grow it, and have the resources, like you say, in one place to focus on women just on growing their business, I think is important. So those are the resources that I use. The other thing I think people should do is never, ever lose track of the importance of face-to-face and groups. right, with people and resources. There's nothing better than speaking one-on-one, getting together with other coaches or whatever you do, starting a group or a mentorship program, because I think you get firsthand feedback when you talk to someone that's different from other resources.
Well, tell us how you've been able to leverage LinkedIn, because some of our listeners are using LinkedIn or tiptoeing out to show their thought leadership on LinkedIn. So as a career strategy, do you have any tips on showing up? Because that's kind of an online face to a sort of building relationships. Yeah. Talk to us about that.
Consistency. There's a reason why there are experts in every part of the process of a business. So social media experts, you go, oh, that's a luxury. It's not a luxury. It takes so much time to create a post, to create wording, right? So that's probably the easiest part. But now, do you have your strategic SEO words, right? Do you know what time you're posting that? Do you know? So with LinkedIn, it's the same thing. It's being consistent. It's if you are going to put out an article a week, put out an article a week. And then don't just put out an article, because there's a lot of articles out there. When you put out your article each week, what is your strategy? What are your 5 steps behind that, right? If I want to be on Simone Morris's podcast, I'm going to tag you every time, right? And after I tag you maybe on 5 or 6, then I can reach out to you to be on your podcast. So I always tell people, it doesn't start that. You're just starting when you create the product or the service. Mm-hmm. Then the work begins. You got to work that article. You got to make sure people see it. You got to start a dialogue. If someone comments, do you comment back? Are you putting in the time? So LinkedIn, I think people are very, very aware of that.
Awesome.
Join groups, and it takes time.
It does. It does indeed. We need to give ourselves the time to build our reputation, build relationships, etc. So thanks for sharing.
I was on yesterday, and I remember reaching out to 3 executives at NFL. I used to play professional football, and I wanted to do some coaching. And I said, let me see who I can find, in upper management, and let me just start the ball rolling. I sent messages on LinkedIn. We'll see what happens. But unless you start it and follow it up, you never know.
Okay, so Monica, I'm back at, I used to play football. I heard the other stuff that you said, but I'm back at it. I don't know if anybody else listening is like, wait, you say she used to play football? Is that, what didn't you do? Is that what you said?
At 44, I was going through a midlife awakening, because it's not a crisis, it's an awakening, I think. And I started playing professional tackle football.
Wow.
I was one in the league, and I have a son, and he plays football, and I taught him, and that just sparked me to go ahead and try it. And it was amazing, Simone. It was an amazing experience. It was the most difficult one, I think, of my adult life, but amazing.
I am speechless. I'm thinking you can do anything you put your mind to based on that one story. If you had to come up with a tagline or a sentence that described your career, your body of work, what would you title it?
A phoenix rising. And I love that, because I feel like even the symbol of the phoenix shows the phoenix rises, it falls, it's fallen. And we all fall. It's a journey. We have this really diluted version of success and how it comes, right? And what it looks like or how it should be. And we get so lost in it that we lose the real purpose of what we wanted to do or our journey, So I don't know. Does that answer it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's been such a pleasure getting to hear more about your story. Lots of solid career nuggets for people to take away. Please tell our listeners, if they want to stay connected with you or learn more, how would they go about contacting you?
You can reach me at coaching@monicatalks.com, or you can reach me on my website, Monica Taylor Talks, or monicatalks.com. And also social media at Monica Talks. I'd love to talk to women. We have a new business plan also that we just created that's super easy to use for women who want to start their business. I'm so excited about that, Simone. I think it will take what's so overwhelming to women to create a business, and so you can do it in a weekend.
That's awesome. Seems like I need to have you back to kind of unpack that parting words. That's awesome. I love that. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on the Power of Owning Your Career podcast.
Thank you for having this podcast, Simone.
Thank you for listening to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. It is my hope that you enjoyed today's episode. You can check out the show notes for this episode on the SimoneMorrisEnterprises.org website by clicking the podcast menu. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and tell a friend or two about it.